welcome to Conversations at Elevation. This is episode 7. Again, I am one of your hosts, Jay. How you doing, Clayton?
Doing all right, Jay. Very excited for our interview today with Shelby from Slice.
Yeah, this will be a fun one. I really enjoyed all the interviews we've had so far, and I think this will just continue in the long line of us getting better as interviewers, but also educating our guests. So, without further ado, let's bring Shelby in. All right, there we go. I definitely thought I messed something up when you didn't immediately pop up.
My bad.
No, that's probably on me too. All right. So, hi Shelby, how you doing? If you kind of just introduce yourself and what your title is, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so glad to be here this morning, afternoon, some part of the day.
Today.
Yeah, today. In general, what day is it anymore? My name is Shelby Kennedy, and I'm a project coordinator senior in the SLCE office. And SLCE stands for Service Leadership and Community Engagement. For folks who maybe aren't familiar with what that is. But yeah, slice like a slice of pizza.
Simple enough.
Nice.
Could you tell us about your journey through university academia?
Yeah, I love talking about what college is like for people. And so, really briefly, my experience started out with me being a first-generation college student within my family. So my dad went to maybe a couple semesters of community college. He has great stories about falling asleep in an astronomy class. And that's all I knew about college before I was a freshman myself. So I actually, just as a fun fact, picked my major by reading through a list of majors on the website. And someone told me I had to have a major before I registered for classes. Don't know who that was. I really had no idea what I was doing. So reading through this website, there was the sociology major that I ended up settling on. Their description was something to the effect of, do you wish you could understand people, or do you want to know how people work? And I thought, yeah, I have no idea how people work. Please someone teach me this. So I ended up majoring in sociology for undergrad. I went to a small private liberal arts college in Washington State. So unfortunately not a UW alum, but I do love being here where I am now. So that sociology major kind of morphed into what was essentially a social work major, but focused on both the micro-human element of the individual interaction element of social work, as well as the community aspect of what's sometimes called macro-social work. That's everything from community organizing to policy to kind of just how communities work together and how neighborhoods interact, which was a really interesting focus to take. And so throughout that really interesting career, I had a couple of just random fun minors. Dead languages were interesting to me at that time. I just thought college was a fun place to explore things, obviously. And ended up having some great supervisors while I worked in actually rec sports, or our recreation center at the time. So yeah, great to have that connection in life. And that was just, I think, a really fun place to work. I love working in recreation. I had a great supervisor who really taught me about what the college experience is like and what leadership looks like in a university, as well as he really challenged me to look into grad school and what that could mean for me. I didn't know that you could get a GA position that can pay for your entire school and possibly living expenses too. Because I thought grad school was something way out of my league, and nobody I knew went to grad school or could tell me what it was other than research and writing a dissertation, which didn't sound like fun at all. So having these awesome supervisors in my life really challenged me to look into what I can do in the next steps. Ended up settling at Wichita State University for grad school, so go Shocks and all that good stuff. Yeah, best mascot in my opinion in the NC2A. But so that really, I ended up in Wichita with no real reason to be in Wichita, but I thought it was an interesting place to kind of change up and live my life for a while. Did a semester of a master's in social work. And this is where I like to tell people, you can still change your major in grad school, because I ended up actually switching from social work into a counseling program that ended up being counseling in higher education, with a focus on higher education leadership as well. So a lot of people in the field that we all kind of work in student affairs, a lot of people have a higher ed student affairs degree, but there's a number of obviously pathways that can get you here. So yeah, that ended up being a very interesting way to kind of approach the work that we do in SLCE, as well as just kind of putting together my life experiences of what it's like to be a student and a leader in a university.
Nice. I'm from Wichita. I grew up in Wichita, and going to Wichita State basketball and baseball games. So yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know you went to Wichita State, spent some time in good old Wichita.
Small world, man.
Could you tell us a little bit more about SLCE and how does it operate within our student affairs bubble?
Yeah, that's a great question. SLCE, in kind of large terms, is very, I think, outreach focused in an off-campus way that's not always indicative of other areas of student affairs. So there's obviously many aspects to what student affairs is and does. And I think the unique role that SLCE really plays in there is looking at how the university and how students can be involved off campus, as well as how it can affect change in our community in the wider world versus just here on campus. So what that looks like kind of in broad strokes, SLCE puts on obviously a lot of service programs, alternative breaks, those kind of really service-focused programs, as well as the rest of the acronym that is obviously you can't really extricate these aspects from each other. You can't take leadership out of service, or you really shouldn't take leadership out of service, I should say. But in broad strokes, there's programs that focus on these individual aspects of our acronym. So there's leadership development classes that my colleague Richard puts on. And these are academic classes for credit. They're usually a ton of fun and very challenging at times too, because we usually get you to try and challenge your values and learn from where you are in the world right now. Something that's unique and happening right now in SLCE, or mainly out of the SLCE office in partnership with the ASUW, is the Post-Vote voter education initiative and voting initiative. And so really what that looks like in this election year is helping people figure out where, how, and when to vote. Because that's a big question that varies widely depending on where you're from and what your interests are and things like that. In an average year, between Post-Vote and some other just kind of educational programs we try to focus on sometimes direct ballot issues or kind of trying to think of like issue-specific education, kind of in broad terms. So that can be, we're going to talk about immigration and the environment and what kind of maybe research is saying, what politics are saying. So helping students understand all of these really broad issues and how they can affect change in the world around them right now.
Nice, that's really awesome.
Yeah. So why do you think it's so important to offer the programming and the services that you do to the student community?
Yeah, there's, a lot of reasons, I should say, behind this. And there's a lot of kind of specific things that drive what the SLCE office does. So kind of in general, I'll say that the SLCE office, as much as it is outreach focused, we kind of differ from our nonprofit partners in Laramie in that our focus is on the student experience and how to develop students into community leaders and leaders and world changers in a variety of ways. So that means a couple of different philosophies will guide the way that we approach this work. One of those kind of philosophies that I really ascribe to is this active citizen continuum. And this really came out of the work of alternative breaks leaders. So that's when we usually take a group of students, typically outside of the Laramie communities, will travel either domestically or internationally over what's typically an academic break time. And that is just a great experience to get you out of your comfort zone and get you learning. But there's some people, after a lot of time, did some research on these trips, and every college usually has their own version of this program. And they found that there's this kind of usual development that students will go through as they're developing into what we call an active citizen, which is like the end goal of this spectrum, a way of describing the eventual outcome of this learning experience. And that is really kind of characterized by the community being a priority in your life. But what it can take to get there sometimes, and community has so many different definitions, there's so many different values to it. But typically students will start as a member of a community. So you come to Laramie, whether you grew up here, whether you are moving here for the first time. And so you may have an idea of being a member of a community, you may be living here, but you don't maybe have an idea of maybe some of the social problems and social interactions happening in your community. and as well as how you can connect on them. So usually eventually students get an idea of like, I see a problem in the world and I want to do something about it. Sometimes that's joining a volunteer program. So that means that you have an idea of what you want to do and you have great intentions about making change, but maybe you aren't really aware of why or how to make that change happen. So that can look like maybe showing up to like a service Saturday. So you're a volunteer, you're showing up, but maybe you don't have a great background of why or how you're there. Obviously, we seek to fulfill that as we take you through the service Saturday experience. But the next phase of really becoming an active citizen in any part of the world is discovering some root causes. So when you're looking at the world, you're asking, maybe why does this social problem exist? Or why does my world look the way it does? And then usually out of that why comes the how do I then affect change, which gets us to the kind of hopefully end product of active citizen. And in all of this, in SLCE we use the term citizen frequently, which in the recent probably 10 years or so has been very polarized, especially in the US and the work we do. There's been a challenge to using the word citizen. We like to use the term global citizen just to kind of reference. We're not talking about a specific country, a nationality, or legal definition of what that means, but looking at what citizens do is they are an active part of a community, and you're just a member of that community as well. So citizen being broad, kind of being general, and not in an exclusionary sense in any way. So that's kind of the philosophy that guides how SLCE approaches, I should say, like the general student development of what we do, both in leadership, service, community engagement. But there's also a great, I think, impact of like in student affairs terms, there's this way that we talk about students building a connection to each other and to the community that they live in. There's a great, I think, aspect of when students do service in the community, especially with the big event, things like that, right? Getting you off campus, we're going into neighborhoods that you might have never been in before, and you may never go in again as a student. But sometimes as you drive through Laramie, you can look at the house and say, like, I know who lives in that house, and I know a little bit about them. So that aspect of being a member of the community and also getting to know other people in there, as well as seeing the impact you have on the world too. So that's a little bit about, I think in general, how service can play into the student experience. But in general, I think a theme that we see in just so many of SLCE experiences is evaluating problems and evaluating the world around you.
Nice. We touched on it a little bit there with this. Could you expand upon that? And like, why do you think it is so important to offer these programs and services for the student community, for them to be able to go out into the Laramie community, and then also, as what you were talking about earlier, going out into international and national places? Like, why are those so important for you guys and important to the student experience?
Yeah, definitely. The student experience, I think, is a unique part of everyone's life, because eventually we are all going to, I say all as if I'm not an adult who lives in the world, we're all going to be adults who live in the world at some point in time. Sometimes I work in colleges and I just think of myself as a student all the time, because it's so great to be around students who are learning about their value and the effect that they can have in the world. And that's where I think it's really important to look at your life and look at people who maybe looked up to in life around you, or people that you think are heroes, absolute perfect people, and to look at the world in terms of everything is not like good TM, like capital G good or bad in these binary terms, but really evaluating when you do good in the world, what's the best way to do the ultimate good, which the ultimate good can mean a couple of different things, but what's the best way to maximize the impact you can have in the world and benefit other humans, while also at the same time minimizing harm and damage you can do while doing that. So there's a lot of, I think, ways that we grow up thinking of things being like, yep, this is the right way to do things or the wrong way to do things. I think it's really important to challenge your values and challenge the resources and impact you have in the world, and look at how you can best apply those resources and really practice those values and put them into place, as well as just this massive time of growth and just internal challenge for a lot of students. I think it's great to have an office like SLCE that can come alongside and say, here's all these different models of leadership and different ways to do things. Let's talk about what's maybe good or bad about them. Let's talk about maybe which scenarios it's best to use these different models of leadership. And in that way, I think we can not teach students like this is the right thing to do for the rest of your life, but we are handing you a toolkit of here's how to look at every situation you're in, hopefully every situation. I like to think that we're really important like that. We all work as a team to teach students this. Here's a toolkit of things that you can apply as you go through life to best be a global citizen in that way.
I mean, I would agree. I mean, we're all students at the end of the day. Like, we're all constantly learning. So if we approach life with that kind of look through that prism of like, I'm a student, I'm here to learn. Working on a university campus, we're all students.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
I think that's a really good and important note to make. You talked about the alternative spring breaks. What are some of the locations that you go to? Have you been on one of the alternative spring breaks, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, alternative spring breaks to me are such a special kind of time in life with a special way to, I guess, get to see the world in different ways. Last year, I'm going to try and remember all locations off the top of my head that we had planned. Alternative breaks did get canceled in spring 2020, like literally right on the edge of happening when everything happened on campus, and when campus stopped happening, I should say. So last year, we had plans to go to Kanab, Utah, is a location we typically always go to on spring breaks, and that's with Best Friends and Fall Society. And so they are a shelter, and we get to work with them, which is awesome. There was planned a trip to, wow, so many locations I'm going to forget, California, to focus on environmental education. In the past, we've gone to a couple of different locations to focus specifically on disaster recovery. So Houston or Louisiana, I think we've done in the past as a university. There is Las Cruces, New Mexico, which focuses specifically on immigration and education around that. Wow, so many. I'm going to forget many of them off the top of my head. But internationally, we typically travel to Northern Ireland over winter break, and that's a 10-day trip. Which is really helpful when you're dealing with time change that dramatic. As well as in the past, we've gone to Bolivia internationally, and Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the Dominican Republic, not Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. Kind of not really international, but it falls in that category because we travel so much further. And Trinidad and Tobago, which is where I was this last winter break. And that was also focused specifically on environmental education. And so we got to travel around this entire, we got to see most of the country, and also got to travel to Tobago. And it was very just eye-opening, I think, to look at how another country is focusing on environmental conservation, as well as how this island nation is being impacted by environmental actions that are not in their control. So one day we went to a beach for not the purpose of doing a beach cleanup, but just to kind of do some research, actually looking for poisonous jellyfish. It was a very odd experience. And we ended up just having a great conversation about the trash that was being, brought up by the waves onto this beach. It's a beach where sea turtles nest, typically, not when we were there. But the trash that was on this beach where the sea turtles are usually nesting is coming from a nearby island. So although this country is, doing their best to be creating policies around what kind of trash goes into the ocean and how we're dealing with waste, things like that, this other nation completely separate from them with different policies was making these policies that had an impact on them. So I think that was a great experience to kind of get to know how we as individuals can live in the world, as well as how we need to impact change in order to really kind of make a larger impact that's the best thing for everyone, not just our kind of like microcosm of our own world. So yeah, I think that was a great experience for a number of reasons. Typically, an alternative break experience will either be domestic, which typically means that we're driving to that location, or an international trip that involves flying in that way. But we really try to make these experiences as inexpensive as possible, because this might be like your experience to go to LA for maybe the first time. And so we're gonna travel together as a group, probably stay in some Airbnbs and cook all of our meals together, which is usually a fun experience. Also a great way to get to know other students, because you get to really live in a close environment for a very very close environment. You get to do a lot of work together. You have really impactful life experiences together. And usually you're lifelong friends. I'm still in Snapchat groups from alternative breaks that, we're still talking about what's going on in the world, whether it's about our trip focus or not. And another trip that I've been able to go on that we haven't been able to do recently, partially because of cost and because it is, again, a European destination, is Germany and Poland to focus on the Holocaust. So that was a great experience of being a witness to what's happening, what has happened in the past, as well as how some current policies are maybe similar to or different from or becoming aligned with previous worldviews that led to this. So I think there's a great challenge to these alternative break trips, that your learning and your engagement in service doesn't stop when you get back to the army, especially that Germany-Poland experience that we had. The whole experience was really just about education, taking in what's going on in the world, and the service happens when we get back. So that's when we challenge our participants to get involved, whether that's speaking to a class of your peers, or just being an advocate online, or being an advocate just in every experience that you go into.
Awesome. Yeah, I've traveled outside the States, and it's incredible to go see what other people are doing to differently to face different challenges and similar challenges to what like we are doing here in the States. It's just interesting to see like how a country that's just like right next to the U.S. or very close can be so completely different on how they tackle changes or what's going on in the world.
Yeah,
so I think
absolutely.
Really important. Can you tell us a little bit about SliceCast and how that came to be for you guys?
Yeah, that is the brainchild of my colleague Richard Reardon, who ironically he'll claim this to this day, has never watched or seen a podcast or listened to a podcast, but just knew that this was kind of the model of something that he wanted to put into the world, which has been, it's been an adventure, I think, to navigate kind of what a SliceCast should look like and what it is. But really this came out of, probably similar to what brought us here today, is the idea that when we are on this campus together, we're really all working together. And so let's, bring a platform and give people this platform to talk about what's interesting to them and how they got to where they are. And I think of the SliceCast specifically, we came to realize that the work that Slice does is everyone's work. Community engagement obviously is something everybody does every day. So I think giving people that platform to talk about, how did you get here? Why do you do the work that you do, and how do you involve community in the work that you do every day? So I think similarly, kind of just so like, hey, what do you want to talk about today? Let's, bring to light something that's happening in the world. And just really, especially when we don't get to see, I think on a micro scale, like we don't get to see each other as colleagues on a daily basis anymore. But we also don't get to see, in passing, any of the administrators we work with, or any of our, kind of farther colleagues that we don't get to see every day. And students as well, you don't have the benefit of maybe, walking into a program and meeting 4 other staff members who happen to be there for the same reason that you are. So really, I think introducing students to the world around us and just, getting the word out about what's good.
So how has the pandemic kind of affected the community outreach that you all do, and how have you been working through this?
Pandemic, man, that was something that no one had training for, I think, at this point in time. There was an immediate shift to right when, especially early mid-March, when the pandemic was really kind of first emerging in our worlds, because prior to March, it was kind of something really proximate. Even flying back to the US from, the places that we were in January, we kind of heard that this was happening, but we didn't have any idea of how big it was going to be. So what Slice did in kind of the immediate and through the end of the semester was really focusing to sharing resources out with students. So if we knew about something that was happening that people could support, we're throwing that out there, because I think there was this immediate shift in people's mind from kind of being focused on what we do day to day to suddenly everyone's having this common experience, and often wanting to do something about that experience. Like, obviously it's a great thing to see in the world, but you see your neighbor struggling and you want to do something about that. So I think one thing that Slice did in the immediate was sharing those resources, those opportunities that we can about how to do good in the world, as well as focusing a little bit on that personal experience. And so looking at what to do when you're overwhelmed by all of these things happening around you. How can you still be active and doing good and taking care of obviously mental health at that point in time? And now, as we are sitting here still, um, is a really important thing to focus on. So being in community is a super important part of mental health, as well as realizing that you have an impact on the world around you, that you have that agency of making change. So sharing out opportunities to do that when we're all sitting in our homes in different ways, I think that was a huge challenge. And I'm massively proud of our student coordinators who, I think in early April, as soon as we got back to kind of classes online, I sent out this email that basically said, so we need to plan a program for the next month. We have no like resources. We're going to plan on everyone having nothing around them to kind of interact with. We have really no time and we have no space to get together. Like, how can we do an effective community service program in this way? And they came together with some awesome campaigns and some service projects that you can do in different ways around you, as well as just focusing on that social media advocacy that has kind of always been part of our lives, but wasn't really a primary part of what we're doing right now. So that's, I think, the immediate kind of change and shift that we did. Right now, as we are still in month, 500 of this pandemic, slices obviously kind of forever changed by the way that we, by this pandemic in our lives. And so what we're doing right now is focusing on supporting what's happening in our communities and not necessarily trying to start large, massive programs on our own. So when we can, we're going to try and promote organizations in our community who need volunteers, who are doing awesome things and just need that support, especially right now, we're trying to come up with some ways to help student organizations and help students when organizations really just need money. So there's a number of organizations, especially around like Mullenfire, where they don't need hands, they don't need supplies, and what we really need is just finances headed to buy specialized equipment and things like that. So trying to shift and support what our needs are in the community and not kind of distracting from what needs to happen. And right now, what we're working on that I'm really excited to be launching this spring is a program that allows, this is the website, that allows student volunteers to join this website. And then community organizations can come alongside and post up the opportunities that they have that are active and live. So if Interfaith needs, 25 people to drive meals to people who are isolated, we can say, hey students, here's a great opportunity. And so those students can be matched directly with opportunities that are happening live in the world around them. And I think eventually this will have a great impact, obviously past the pandemic, when we want to just talk about what's happening in the community. But we know that our community organizations don't have maybe the capacity to reach out to every single student on campus or be updating a website and social media on the daily like we do here on campus. So I think overall, just kind of this focus on this refocusing on the community and organizations in it, as well as, just trying to support students in the long run in any way possible.
Nice. Yeah, it's really, I think the social interaction has been a lot more important now as we're all now hopefully coming out of quarantine and being able to get back in. And I think people are wanting to do that. And it still is hard. I'm sure you know that. Everyone has to keep social distance and wear their mask and everything, but sometimes we as people need social interaction, and sometimes that is closer than 6 feet away, and we can stop the mask on, you're still talking, and that 6-foot rule is very important for the health, but socially it's kind of really struggling with it.
And I'm sure, as you guys know, sometimes you want to get together with people and have like a meaningful experience, and sometimes you just want to like maybe like shoot hoops or just like be around people for any point in time, even if you don't talk and things like that. So it's so important this time.
All right, well, Shelby, that is the last of our questions. So how we like to end each of these interviews is just with a quote or something to send our listeners off into the weekend with. It can be motivational, it can be funny, whatever you kind of would like to share with anybody or everything. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. Ooh, I appreciate that. Trying to put little like nuggets of information together. I think one thing that's been resonating with me, especially in the past, couple of months, is we're still in a pandemic and still trying to obviously entering a heated political time in our world as well. is just this kind of slogan of we're not going to save the world today. So for what that means to me is you can approach every day as if it's the most impactful day of your life, but no matter how much good, you're not going to solve the world's problems today. So it's important to really be putting those seeds out there and starting something good and doing everything you can to work towards good. But at the end of the day, take the pressure off of yourself to solve every single problem and be the most perfect human being in the world. And just focus on what you can actually contribute and what you can do in that day. That's my little nugget for what it's worth.
That's awesome. Well, if you could tell the people where to find the Slicecast, where they can listen to it at, we'll kind of let you promote that and any programming you have, and we'll head out.
Yeah. Awesome. So the best way to find the Slicecast is either just going straight to YouTube and searching UIO Slice, or we have a link tree now. We're entering the latter half of the 21st century, I guess. And so that's linktree/UIO Slice. And that has all of our most important links up there. We've got a couple programs coming up. We're going to try and do some service together in person. So that's that. Hey, we might not be doing the most active and most like meaningful. We're not going to be cutting down trees or, digging ditches, but we're going to be coming together to do some service in person. And that's coming up in November, as well as the Slice Book Club that's going to have a new book launching for November. So if you want a free book and a free conversation, I don't know what that book is going to be yet, but we'd love to see you there. So keep checking back. Feel free to follow Slice on social media as well, and we'd love to see you around.
Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. It's great to see you.
Have a good day, Shelby.
You too.
Thank you all for joining us again. We'll make sure the link is in the description of this video for all the things that Shelby plugged regarding Slice. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you give us a like, subscribe, the works, follow us on social media. Thanks and have a great day.